We change the structure of the NHS a lot. It seems to be something that the powers that be are incredibly enthusiastic about doing. So people will be in new roles often, not because they've chosen to leave or chosen to move into a new job, but because the structure's changed around them and they're actually in a new post, in a new organisation. Secondly, because of the kind of pressures that we'll talk about that are on chief execs and why they move. And thirdly, because I think the role, we kind of expect people to move. It is very unusual for people to be in post for many, many years. There is a subtle expectation for chief execs that they will move through different kinds of organisations. We haven't yet established a pattern for long tenure in chief exec roles. What we have in the NHS is an opportunity at the moment to make some really significant changes to the design of our services and make sure that they are fit for new generations and a whole new set of challenges. The nature of the challenges that we face in the NHS require long-term changes in the way that we design and deliver our services. And as a chief exec in an organisation, you're not going to be able to do that if you're only around for a couple of years. So we need to provide that stability for people and some trust and faith in the people that lead them. We need chief execs who know their organisations, know their communities really well, have established really good relationships with their partner organisations, so work well with local authority chief execs, for instance. And all of those things are things that you do better over time. The more established you are in the role, the more that you've spent time with people around you, the better likelihood you have of having a really good grip of the challenges that your local community face, and therefore what you need to do as a hospital organisation or any other NHS organisation to address those problems. Moving very quickly through those organisations makes long-term, sustainable, creative change incredibly difficult. It creates some continuity for the organisation. There is nothing more damaging to sustainable change than a seismic shift in direction every couple of years as somebody new comes into post and inevitably wants to lead things in their way. So we need to provide for the organisation some sustainability and continuity. Being in a same organisation for a long time, you get to establish really good relationships with your staff. You won't see the kind of turnover in medical and clinical staff, for instance, that you do in very senior managerial staff. So you're there, you're around long enough for people to get to know you and trust your motivations. The organisation gets a bit of stability with a consistent strategy, a single vision, and some time to address the kind of problems that we have. And other people in the system have time to get to know you, understand what you do, and what you do well, and be creative together in working collaboratively to create really great health services locally. There is nothing better to prepare you to be really great at the job that you're in than experience and expertise and the wisdom that comes from having been around for some time. The people that we know that are really successful in their roles as chief execs have inevitably been there for some years. They've learned through their own successes and their own mistakes. That makes a huge difference to people. At the Leadership Academy, our focus is on making sure that people have both the skills, the right behaviours, the knowledge and the networks they need to be successful in post. And I think this isn't something that we've yet done to great effect in the NHS. So supporting you in post starts first with making sure you've got the right skills and knowledge to do the job in the first place. Your confidence comes from expertise and competence that you have in the post. These jobs are lonelier than they have ever been because of the changes in the system architecture. There aren't now regular opportunities for chief executives to work together either across the system or regionally or nationally. the NHS Leadership Academy can provide that kind of support to people so that they've got access to networks and mentors and coaches and people who can provide them with a safe community to learn, to explore ideas. And we need to make sure that once you're in post, you're provided with additional support. I think coaching and mentoring in the early stages of your role are really important, giving you an opportunity to talk about both the great ideas that you have, but also your own nervousness and express some vulnerability is really important. The pressure on newly appointed chief execs is for them to feel extremely competent very, very quickly, and that's not always the reality. So you need somewhere to express that. We've got to give them a really realistic opportunity to make a success of their job and, much more importantly, make a success of the organisation that they're running. Our communities are let down by constant turnover of the very people that should be providing them with the services that they need. The NHS Leadership Academy has set up its own executive search function for the NHS so that we get to provide very good use of public money, but provide access to networks across the NHS without having to spend money on external search firms. And as well as providing a really great service, it's also given us some real insight into the barriers to appointing good candidates. First of all, of course, we have to make these jobs incredibly attractive. We aren't at the moment crushed in the rush of people who want to become a chief executive when the failures are so public and so brutal. So we need to create an environment where these jobs are seen to be much more attractive. Secondly, we need to help chairs and non-executives who are making these appointments to hold a bit of courage in terms of who they're looking for. And I think that comes in two different ways. First of all, we can't always appoint experienced chief executives by the very nature of the role, unless all we have is internal movement from existing chief executive staff. We need to add to that pool, and we add to that pool by appointing people who are coming from different posts in the NHS. So not every organisation can require their newly appointed chief exec to already have 5 years chief exec experience. It perpetuates the churn that we currently have. Secondly, we often start out at the beginning of the search with chairs and boards expressing an interest in external candidates. We'd really like you to search wildly in the field outside of the NHS. The reality is that the closer you get to actually making the appointment, the more nervous chairs and boards become. And I think it's partly because of what we've just talked about. Chief execs are expected to deliver almost immediately that they walk in the door. And the reality is that external candidates just won't have the knowledge, the experience and the networks needed to be successful. So the nervousness from the chairs and boards, which is entirely understandable, precludes entry in lots of cases to what would be otherwise really good external candidates. If I ruled the NHS for a day, of course the problem is nobody does at the moment, what would I do? I would say to chief execs, let's have a really honest conversation about what is needed in this role, what kind of support you need, how can we make you successful or help you be successful, and then step back and give them some time to do that. The changes we need to see in our NHS organisations will not be delivered in 6 months, they won't be delivered in 12 months. We can't assess somebody's performance in that shorter period of time. We need to have some courage to support people who themselves are demonstrating real courage in taking on such a challenging job. We need to challenge the system a little bit about the pressure we put on them. We talk about changing the culture of performance. We talk about changing the culture that feels top-down command and control and, dare I say, bullying. There is a lot of talk about that. That isn't the experience for a lot of chief executives in the system. The other side of it is to celebrate success. Of all the difficulties that chief execs encounter, these are still amazing jobs. You get to lead an organisation that changes the health of millions of people. It's an incredibly meaningful and important job. And I'd like to see us spend a lot more time celebrating the success of people in post. And we have chief executives who are brilliantly successful at what they do and fabulously inspirational leaders. We need to hold them up as the example of the leader that we aspire to be, rather than constantly holding up those people who we feel have failed us in some way.